The cafe buzzed with the morning rush. Coffee machines hissed, ceramic cups clinked, and hurried footsteps filled the air. The line stretched past the entrance, customers impatiently shifting, checking their watches. Near the counter, a middle-aged man in a neatly pressed suit stood rigid, his brow furrowed as he surveyed the disarray. His sharp eyes landed on a young employee behind the register, a man in his early 30s, dressed in a simple navy blue apron, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, hands moving swiftly between orders. Then it happened. "Are you serious?" The manager's voice boomed over the crowd. Conversations hushed. The clatter of silverware against plates froze mid-motion. The employee barely had time to look up before the manager stormed toward him, jaw clenched, eyes burning. "You call this service? Customers have been waiting for 10 minutes. His hand slammed against the counter, rattling the tip jar. A mother holding a stroller recoiled. A businessman in line muttered under his breath. The employee flinched but said nothing. His face remained unreadable, but his fingers gripped the counter, knuckles whitening. "You're a disgrace. If I were the owner, I'd fire you on the spot." The words dripped with venom, his spit practically flying. A tense silence swallowed the cafe whole. The employee exhaled slowly, steadying himself. Then, with deliberate calm, he reached into his back pocket, pulled out a sleek black wallet, and slid a business card onto the counter. The manager frowned, snatched it up, and read the embossed letters. His face drained of color. The cafe owner's name was printed in bold. It was the man he had just humiliated. The room held its breath. The business card trembled slightly in the manager's grip. His eyes darted between the embossed name and the man standing before him. Nathan Cole. Nathan didn't move. He didn't smirk, didn't gloat, just stood there, waiting. His posture was relaxed, but there was a quiet weight behind his gaze. The kind of look that saw everything but revealed nothing. The silence stretched, thick with something unspoken. The cafe patrons pretended not to stare, but every ear was tuned in, every breath held in suspense. Then the manager scoffed, a nervous, forced chuckle. He flipped the card between his fingers and set it on the counter. Careful, too careful, like it might burn him. "Nice joke," he muttered. "You expect me to believe this?" Nathan remained still. He didn't need to speak. The weight of the truth was pressing in fast. The manager, still clinging to his authority, squared his shoulders. "Look, I don't care who you think you are," he said, voice lowering but still firm. "I run this place. I set the standards. And if you can't keep up, you're out." Simple. A few heads turned. A barista behind the espresso machine fidgeted, glancing at Nathan, then back to the frothing milk she nearly overfilled. The air smelled of fresh ground beans, but the tension soured it. Nathan exhaled slowly and measured. His hands, clean, strong, rested on the counter. Hands that had built this cafe from nothing, hands that had signed the checks, chosen the menu, and designed the logo, now gleamed on the window. And yet, here he was, being dressed down like a nobody in the very place he owned. The manager, oblivious, pushed on. "If you're struggling with the pressure, maybe food service isn't for you. I need employees who can handle real responsibility." A woman at the register hesitated with her wallet mid-air, eyes flicking toward Nathan. A teenager in line whispered something to his friend. The hum of the cafe felt charged, like a storm about to break. Still, Nathan said nothing. The manager mistook his silence for weakness. He smirked now, confidence returning, his voice dripping with condescension. "You know what? Maybe I should just save you the trouble. Go ahead and take that apron off." The words landed like a slap. The cafe held its breath. Nathan didn't flinch. Instead, he moved with practiced ease, lifting the edges of his apron, not to remove it, but to fold it neatly, smoothing out the creases. The manager, mistaking this for compliance, grinned. Victory. Until Nathan spoke. "Before I do," his voice was quiet, controlled. "Tell me something." The manager crossed his arms, still riding the high of power. "What?" Nathan met his gaze, calm but unwavering. "How long have you been working here?" The manager blinked. The shift in tone, the steadiness behind it, made something flicker in his eyes, but he caught himself and straightened. "Long enough to know who's in charge?" Nathan gave a small nod, as if considering. "And how much do you think the owner knows about his own business?" The manager frowned. That flicker returned, and the first thread of doubt began to unravel. The manager's smirk faltered just slightly. A flicker of something unreadable crossed his face, but he masked it quickly. "Look, I don't have time for riddles," he said, voice clipped. "If you have something to say, say it. Otherwise, take off the apron and walk out." Nathan studied him, slow and deliberate, the way a chess player sizes up an opponent who doesn't realize they've already lost. "It's interesting," Nathan mused, fingertips brushing the counter, "how some people believe authority is the same as power." The manager narrowed his eyes. "What's that supposed to mean?" Nathan lifted the business card from the counter, turning it between his fingers, then set it back down, centering it neatly. "It means you think you're in control," he said. "But you never stop to ask yourself, who gave you that control?" Something shifted. A whisper of tension rippled through the room. The baristas were listening now, eyes darting between them, hands hesitating mid-task. Even the customers seemed caught in the undertow of the moment. The manager scoffed, shaking his head. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, but his voice wasn't as sharp this time. Nathan leaned forward slightly, resting his forearms on the counter. "Tell me," he said, casual, conversational. "How do you think this place runs?" The manager blinked. "What?" "The cafe," Nathan continued, his voice smooth, unhurried. "How do you think the bills get paid?" "The suppliers? The rent?" The manager crossed his arms. "Why do you care?" "That's none of your business." Nathan tilted his head, just a fraction. "But isn't it?" A beat of silence. The manager's mouth pressed into a tight line. "All right, I've had enough," he snapped. "You're wasting my time, and I have actual work to do. Either you clock out, or I call security and have you removed." Nathan didn't move. "Security?" His lips twitched. Not a smirk, not quite. "For what exactly?" The manager exhaled sharply, impatient. "For causing a scene, for refusing to follow orders." "Orders?" Nathan interrupted, his voice just a degree lower, not loud, not forceful, just enough to make the word land differently. The manager straightened. Nathan let the silence stretch, let the weight of the moment settle. Then in the same measured tone he said, "Tell me, do you know who signs your paychecks?" A flicker, a crack in the manager's confidence. He was losing ground, and Nathan knew it. The manager's jaw tightened. "I report to corporate. They handle payroll." Nathan nodded, as if he'd expected the answer. "Right. And corporate? Who do they answer to?" The manager didn't respond. Nathan waited. He could see the mental wheels turning, the hesitation creeping in. The power was shifting, inch by inch. "This is stupid," the manager muttered, but there was an edge of something new in his voice, uncertainty. "You don't know anything about how this place runs." Nathan exhaled, then reached for the business card again, tapping it lightly against the counter. "I know more than you think." The manager glared at him. "You're acting like you own the damn place." Nathan met his gaze, and for the first time, something cold flickered in his expression. "Maybe I do." The words weren't loud, but they landed with the weight of a hammer. The cafe went still. A long, unbearable pause stretched between them. The manager opened his mouth, then shut it again. He stared at Nathan, searching for some indication that this was a joke, a trick. But there was nothing, no smirk, no amusement, just a steady, unwavering certainty. The manager felt his stomach drop, and suddenly, for the first time that morning, he wasn't sure who held the power anymore. The manager's throat bobbed as he swallowed. His palms, once planted firmly on the counter, curled into uneasy fists. "What?" His voice cracked slightly before he masked it with a forced chuckle. "You're joking." Nathan didn't blink, didn't smile, didn't move. The weight of silence bore down on the cafe. The baristas had stopped pretending to work. The customers, once just passive observers, were now silent witnesses to something unraveling. The manager shifted, suddenly aware of how much attention was on him. "Fine," he scoffed, though the confidence had thinned. "If you're really the owner, prove it." Nathan's gaze flickered down to the card still resting on the counter. He tapped it once with his fingertip. "You're holding the proof." The manager's fingers twitched around the card, gripping it tighter. He glanced at it again, as if the name might have changed, as if some explanation might magically appear to rescue him from the sinking reality. Nathan let the silence stretch, let it suffocate. "Check the employee database," he finally said, voice calm but firm. "My name is on every document tied to this business, the lease, the accounts, the licensing." He paused, letting the words settle. "Your contract?" A cold prickle crawled up the manager's spine. Nathan watched him carefully. The way his shoulders stiffened, the way his jaw clenched, like he was trying to chew through his own mistake. He knew, even if he wouldn't admit it, not yet. Still he fought against the inevitable, shaking his head. This doesn't make sense. I've been running this place for months. I've never seen you before." Nathan tilted his head slightly. "Exactly." The response was so simple, so absolute, and somehow it made everything worse. A muscle in the manager's cheek twitched. He was scrambling now, reaching for control that was slipping faster than he could grasp. "If you're the owner, why the hell were you working the register?" He tried to scoff, but the edge of panic was creeping into his voice. "That doesn't make sense." Nathan exhaled through his nose, slow, measured. Then finally, he straightened, rolling his shoulders back. And for the first time since this entire ordeal started, he looked like he belonged there. "Because I believe in knowing my business from the ground up," Nathan said simply. "I built this cafe, but I don't just sit in an office collecting checks. I work here. I see how things run. I see who keeps this place going." His gaze locked onto the manager. "And I see who tries to tear it down." The manager's breath hitched. He tried to hold Nathan's stare, but found himself looking away, jaw tightening. Nathan took a step forward, not aggressive, just enough to close the space between them. Just enough to make the manager feel smaller. "You didn't ask my name before you started yelling," Nathan continued, voice steady. "You didn't ask if I needed help, if something was wrong, if there was a reason orders were delayed." His eyes darkened. "You just assumed you had power over me." The manager's mouth parted slightly, but no words came out. Nathan leaned in, his voice dropping just enough that only the manager could hear. "But now you realize—" He let it hang, let the moment press down. Then, "You never did." The color drained from the manager's face. His grip on the business card tightened until the edges bent. Nathan finally pulled back, watching as realization fully took hold. The moment when arrogance shattered into regret. But regret wouldn't save him now. It was too late. The manager stood frozen, gripping the bent business card as if it could somehow change what had just happened. The weight of his mistake bore down on him, suffocating. He had walked into this battle believing he had control. Now he was the one struggling to breathe. Nathan let the silence linger, let it settle into the cracks of the manager's confidence until there was nothing left but raw exposure. Then, with calm precision, he reached behind his back and untied the apron. He folded it neatly, smoothing out the fabric just as he had before. Then, with deliberate care, he placed it on the counter. The manager swallowed hard. A bead of sweat formed on his temple. Nathan met his gaze, unwavering. "I won't be needing this anymore." The cafe was dead silent. Not a single coffee order was being called. Not a single machine was hissing. Every employee, every customer, every bystander was waiting, watching. The manager finally found his voice, a weak, unsteady thing compared to the authority he had barked with earlier. "Look, He cleared his throat, forcing some of his bravado back. "I didn't know who you were. If I had known, Nathan raised a hand. The manager fell silent instantly. "That's the problem," Nathan said, voice steady. "You don't treat people with respect because they deserve it. You only do it when you think they have power over you." The manager's face twisted. There was no way out of this now. Nathan turned to the employees behind the counter. The baristas, who had watched every second of this unfold, stood still, their faces tense, waiting. Nathan exhaled. "How long has this been going on?" At first, no one spoke. But then, slowly, one of the younger baristas, a girl who looked barely out of high school, gripping a milk frother like it was an anchor, spoke up. "He yells at us all the time." Her voice was small but firm. Another barista, older, nodded. "Calls us lazy, threatens to fire people for no reason." A murmur of agreement rippled through the staff. Nathan took it all in, expression unreadable. But something in his posture shifted, something final. He turned back to the manager, tilting his head slightly. "Tell me something," he said. "If I hadn't walked in today, if I had never seen this for myself, how much longer would this have gone on?" The manager had no answer. He wasn't sure there was one that wouldn't make this worse. Nathan inhaled slowly. Then, with the same quiet composure he had held all morning, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. The manager's stomach twisted. Nathan tapped the screen a few times, then lifted the phone to his ear. "Yeah, it's me. I need a new general manager by the end of the day." The manager stiffened. "Wait, what?" Nathan held up a finger, signaling for him to wait. "No, I don't need to hear any excuses. Just send me the candidate list. I'll review it later." A pause. Then, without hesitation, "And make sure he's off the payroll by tonight." The words hit like a hammer. The manager's lips parted, a desperate, frantic panic flickering across his face. "Nathan, Mr. Cole, please, I didn't mean—" Nathan lowered his phone, slipping it back into his pocket. "That's the problem," he said again, voice calm. "You did." The manager floundered, looking around as if expecting someone, anyone, to back him up. But there was nothing. Only blank stares. The employees weren't afraid anymore. Nathan exhaled and turned to the baristas. "You all deserve better, and from now on, you will get better." There was a beat of hesitation, then a slow, genuine ripple of relief spread across the team. A few exchanged glances, silent but meaningful. Nathan gave them a nod before stepping around the counter. He walked past the manager without sparing him a second glance. And just like that, it was over. The power shift had been cemented. Nathan paused at the door, taking one last look at the cafe he had built. He could feel the energy shifting, like something toxic had finally been lifted. Then, as he pushed the door open, he heard it, a single clap, then another, then another. A slow wave of applause spread through the cafe. Nathan didn't stop. He didn't need to. Justice had already been served. What would you have done in this situation? Do you think the manager got what he deserved? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you loved this story, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more gripping, real-life storytelling. Turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful story. More shocking moments are coming soon.